Good morning, gentlemen. I think I've been a little late in getting back because it's really busy. So many things to do, but I'm back and I hope you all are attentive and going to listen to what I'm going to say now. We're going to discuss something very important about Ukraine. Why Ukraine? Well, because Ukraine is in the news. It is something that everybody's talking about and everybody wants to know. And today is a very important day also because it's the 9th of May. And this is the day the Russian people, they celebrate their victory over Nazi Germany. That was the time when Adolf Hitler was defeated and Stalin was the victor. It was a sort of a battle between two iron-willed, strong-willed men, and Stalin prevailed. It was a great victory, and there is no doubt about it that the Western powers would not have won this war, that is the Second World War, in case the Russians were not fighting on their side. Now, politics is the art of expediency. So the Western powers have forgotten all about that. And now, as per the latest doctrine which has been put forward by the Americans to perpetuate their hegemony over Europe, is that Russia is the enemy. While in World War II, Russia was the ally. Much water has flown down the Thames, so let's forget about that, that's gone, but no point, but we must bring it out. And today, as I told you, is the 9th of May, and the Russians are going to have their military parade and celebration. But this is in the background of their operations in Ukraine, which I'm afraid has not gone according to plan. Why? Because the plan was faulty. Vladimir Putin, in my opinion, is not in the same class as Joseph Stalin. Stalin was ruthless and he knew what he wanted. Putin is halfway down the line, and halfway has got no meaning. Either you are in or you are out. He planned the Ukraine operation taking in the intelligence inputs from his generals. I'm afraid his intelligence was poor, and he hadn't catered for the resolve of the small countries of NATO who were so scared of the Russian bear that they went into the American embrace straight away. He thought that Europe is getting all its supplies from Russia, I mean oil and gas, and he had a leverage. He still has that leverage, but he's losing it fast. NATO and the EU are looking for other options, and there are plenty of them, though they are a little more costly. For example, Saudi Arabia is stepping in to supply oil to Europe. It's going to take time, but ultimately in the long run, if the battle continues, it will be kaput for the Russians in Europe as far as trade is concerned. There's already an embargo, sanctions. By now, Putin should have overrun the whole of Ukraine, and he's nowhere near it. He's just taken about 20% of the territory. You can call it a victory, you can call anything, but it's not decimation of Zelensky and his Katori. Now, what's going to happen next? What's Putin going to show on today's parade? Because today was is a very symbolic day for the Russians, and he wanted to probably show to the Russians, look, we've done something. But they couldn't do much in Ukraine. They got defeated, they couldn't take Kyiv, they couldn't take Kharkov, and even now a small portion of the city of Mariupol is still in the hands of the Azov Brigade, which are a sultry sort of nihilist group of men, who believe in death and destruction only. And they don't mind dying, they die. Now, Putin has to bite the bullet. He had to bite the bullet. He didn't write it properly, you know. You can't have half-baked measures in any war. That's not how war is fought. His reactions to the Western powers have been very, very poor. And his planning of the invasion of Ukraine was poorer still. He thought it would be a limited military engagement, as I've already mentioned earlier views. But it didn't turn out that way. The Americans outsmarted him. And they were able to get the smaller countries of Europe, Belgium, Holland, all of them together, you know. And that was kaput again, tough luck for the Russians, and more so for Putin. He ordered an invasion without taking into the capability of the Ukrainian force. After all, the Ukrainians and the Russians are the same racial stock, they're a slave race. But unfortunately, he didn't make the proper assessments. He didn't bomb Ukraine much earlier, which he should have done. His campaign should have begun with a massive bombing of the Ukrainian military installations all over the country for at least 20 days. He didn't do that. There was no bombing. He just moved in with the army, with the Air Force coming in. And another factor is, I think, motivation. Motivation is a very big factor in any war. And the Russians, soldiers, they're not having the motivation, you know. What the hell are we fighting in Ukraine? What for? So political indoctrination was lacking. In addition, his intelligence generals let him down. I think there was a whole lot of mediocre lot of them. 6 of them got killed. Now, if a general gets killed, right, I mean, how are you going to fight the war? They lost their flagship in the Moskva River in the Black Sea. And the Russian Navy has been practically able to do nothing much. They have taken some areas, yes, but they are minuscule. And after you're fighting for almost over 2 months, you have nothing much to show. You must remember that the Indian army occupied an area as big as Ukraine inside 13 days, because it was a campaign where General Aurora burned midnight oil in Fort William, planned village by village, everything. The Russians didn't do it. So they are to be faulted for military planning. They are to be faulted because they didn't react properly to the Western alliance. And now it looks like he was behaving like a paper tiger. Nuclear drills, this thing, that thing. I mean, what was the use of all that? Because American intelligence says he's not going to use the nuclear weapons, because he's going to use it and it's going to destroy Russia also. Of course, Europe will be wiped out. There's no doubt about it. But then I must tell you, friends, that this is the danger. The danger is that if Putin fails, as he is failing, a drowning man catches a straw, any straw, and he has to keep his prestige among the people in the world. What is the world going to say? The Russians got defeated in Ukraine. They went in with a lot of fanfare, drums and whatnot, and they got defeated. So, can Putin afford that? No. So he has to win at any cost. And when you want to win at any cost, you may use desperate measures. You have to use them. And desperate measures, the only thing he's got is limited nuclear weapons. I mean, tactical nuclear weapons will be used in a small scale in war. Even if few of them are used, I'm sure the Ukrainians will be finished. And this man Zelensky, who has led Ukraine to ruin, will be just wiped away in the Danube River or somewhere else, you know, in the Black Sea. I don't know. The Russians' failure is telling, and I think the Russian military prestige has gone down very badly. China is watching the Russian actions with great interest. And they are going to invade Taiwan. There's no doubt about that. Because yesterday, almost 2 dozen aircraft of the Chinese Air Force intruded into the airspace of Taiwan. Why? They wanted to test the defenses. And how good is the radar? How good are the interceptors? And nothing much happened, they came back. So they are testing, watching the conflict. The Chinese are very sure. After all, they produced Sun Tzu, the military theorist who wrote those war theories much before Clausewitz, 2000 years before. Now what is going to happen next? As I've said, a cornered man can do anything. And if the West corners him, they are going to get burnt also. When you light a fire and the fire spread, what happens? It burns everybody, and that's what's going to happen. I feel very bad about all this, because this has been engineered by only one man, and that is Joe Biden. He's done it for personal reasons. I don't know what you can say about it. But what are his personal reasons? Local standings among the American people. His approval ratings are very low. Donald Trump is breathing down his neck. And he has to show something to the American people. Look, I've done something, I'm winning the battle for America. And as I've said earlier, right from 92, the Americans have chosen the enemy. Russia was never the enemy. But they chose Russia as the enemy. And for this, I'm afraid it's possible that America may have to pay a terrible price for the folly of Mr. Biden. There is every possibility, I don't say every possibility, there is more and more likelihood that a desperate Putin may authorize tactical use of small yield nuclear weapons, which the Russians have. And that will give them the decisive victory, but it will destroy Ukraine. And the effects of the nuclear fallout are going to be terrible, not only for Russia, but for the Europe. There's going to be nuclear dust going in the air, and the radiation is going to spread. And what will be the result? Europe will be destroyed. I've already pointed out once, that when Nikita Khrushchev, first secretary of the Soviet Communist Party, in 1961 had made a statement. He says, all I need is 5 to 6 H bombs, thermonuclear bombs, and England will cease to exist from the world map. Very true. England is a small country and playing with fire. They still think they are part of the great British Empire which used to exist 75 to 80 years back, when they be the adage, the sun never sets on the British Empire, but that's all over. It's not there now. The Americans will be devastated as well. And Biden is playing with fire. He is talking and taking a stand in which he wants to bring the entire world against Russia. You see his actions. He got the regime in Pakistan, which was pro-Russia, destabilized, thrown out. Imran Khan has popular support in Pakistan, there's no doubt about it. But he has been overthrown, and it's by the machinations of the Americans. They brought in a man who is absolutely facing so many corruption charges, and this gentleman, when he had gone to Saudi Arabia, was booed. He was heckled. It's never happened, not in 50 years in Saudi Arabia. This is what is happening now. So, gentlemen, today is the 9th of May, which is the victory or the VE day for the Russian against the Nazi Germany. It's a day in which they celebrate with a massive military parade. And Putin has to show something, but he's got nothing to show today. He's been fighting for over 2 months and his results are absolutely poor. You've just been able to occupy about 15-20% of the territory with all the latest weaponry, and despite having complete air control. Goliath the Hoot, the famous air warfare theorist, had said, a prerequisite to victory is a favorable air situation and domination of the air power. And this the Russians had, and still they haven't been able to win. They have not lost, but they haven't won. And victory was important for the Russians. In fact, I've been proved wrong, I'll admit it. I expected the Russians to overrun Ukraine within 2 to 3 weeks at the maximum. But they couldn't do anything. They ended nowhere. They launched an assault on Kyiv, got defeated. Had to withdraw, change their priorities. Good, flexibility. But then should have won the East also. Gone ahead, and by now they should have captured Odisha and other places, But nothing much has happened. And Putin is now at his end of his tether. He doesn't know what to do. He's looking for a face-saving way out. Is he? I'm not sure. And China also, Putin must have now realized, is not what he was thinking it is going to be, like a brotherly ally. And in this entire imbroglio, I think the only man who has stood by Putin is the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. He's played his cards magnificently. We are taking oil from Russia. We're not bothered about what the Americans are talking, but the Americans talk a lot. And they don't look inwards, That's the problem. So there's a lot of problem going on in America on abortion. How can you deny a woman a right to abort a child? How can you deny it? But that's precisely what the Supreme Court is going to give, the judgment, the draft judgment which has already been circulated. This is just, by the way, to say that America is not the land of milk and honey. And all those Indians who are thinking we are going to go to America, have a jolly good time, well, think over, friends. Everything's not easy. And nothing comes on a platter. You've got to give something. And I also feel sorry for the million-odd Indians who have just run away to England, to do a good job. I know a very big man, who was here in India doing pretty well. He went to America, to England, took English citizenship. I couldn't understand what's the problem. England is on its last legs. And when it's on its last legs, what happens? It collapses. It's going to collapse. Maybe 10 years, 20 years, you give it any time. And maybe war is going to hasten that. Putin has not won. That is bad for the Russians. But it is worse for the West. If Putin had won in Ukraine, things would have been normal. But failure to win in Ukraine is going to affect the Western world. Putin is going to escalate. There could be nuclear war, and that would be the end of Western Europe. Gentlemen, we are passing through a very critical stage. I want to talk on so many other topics, but I thought I should give an idea as to what exactly is likely to happen. And I've spelled it out. A cornered man can do anything. The defeat in Ukraine is going to tell terribly on the Russians. And not only the Russians going to suffer, the Americans are also going to suffer. There will be escalation unless there is a miracle or from somewhere Jesus Christ comes, and stops the fighting. Let's wait and see. And I think I'll close now with my familiar farewell. Jai Hind. If you have the time, share this, like this, subscribe. I'll be greatly heartened if you do it. God bless.